Or am I? Now we're hitting got it.
Just hit got it, yeah.
I don't use this kind of mouse. I'm an Apple person, so how do I do it?
Just hit click on the left side.
It's the left side. Okay, sorry.
Right side click, sorry.
The other left.
Right.
And we got one more coming in. Susan Whitney. All right, welcome, Susan.
Good afternoon.
Okay, so we're gonna start now, and I'll try to let other folks in if they join us without interrupting the meeting. Good afternoon, welcome to the Roads and Right of Ways Committee meeting for October the 4th. This meeting is being conducted remotely and is actually a hybrid with the Chapter 2 Act 2023. Please note the meeting is being recorded. And all attendees that are participating by Zoom need to be identified for the record, which we have done so with the names on there. Because we are in a hybrid, we have some members of the board that are on the Zoom portion of it. We'll do roll call attendance and also record all votes via roll call. Zoom participants will be asked to identify themselves. The name is at the bottom, but if you speak, we ask you just state your name. And also be aware that because it is a Zoom session, if you hit a button incorrectly when your screen sharing is up, if you're doing something that's been allowed to show, that anything on your computer may in fact be visible. That being said, we'll conduct a roll call. Alan Reinhardt.
Here.
Lee Saperstein.
Here.
Rick Atherton.
Here.
Nelson Eldridge.
Yeah.
Ed Gillum.
Here.
Rob Rainey.
Here.
And Bill Greeter. So we'll jump right into this.
So we've got Nat Lowell and who else is absent?
So the absent is Nat Lowell and Phil Smith.
Yeah.
So do we have any public comment on items not on the agenda? Seeing none. We have some minutes to approve. The minutes of August the 15th, which we were sent out and been bicycled around, and we just haven't formally approved them. So if we could have a motion to approve. That was made by Snooky,
Second.
seconded by Ed. Roll call for acceptance, Alan Reinhardt,
Hi.
Lee Saperstein,
Aye.
Rick Atherton,
Hi.
Snooky Eldridge,
Aye.
Ed Gillum,
Aye.
Rob Rainey.
Abstain, I wasn't here.
Thank you, and Bill Greeter, aye.
I think you set a record, 55 pages for the minutes.
What a good one.
Just to let you know, I'm really alert here.
So on the agenda, we just posted it's a review of the roads, ways, and bike path sidewalk 2024 status. The charts were presented as part of the packet. That was for informational purposes, passing along what we've been told as updates from the town. We've been including things like that in our agenda and trying to make this information more accessible to the average citizen. The next item is a brief report on the September 12th bluff walk that Alan, Snooky, and I were joined by Carol Greenberg from Wisconsin Civic Association. We did a walk through the bluff path. Basically, at that particular instance, we were starting to deal with some long, unscheduled but planned installation of a couple of monuments to designate the public ways. The two that we went to look at specifically was Nosegay Lane at Baxter Road and 13 Baxter Road. And so we have gone out, found places that those, it looked like it'd be proper and safe to put those in. And the next step would be to get a work order with the DPW, have that done. While we were there, we also, as we were talking with Carol, we also were looking at encroachments in general, because that has been brought to our attention and we've noticed it on some lots. And because it's a wandering path, it's easy to figure that there's encroachments that are going to happen where the path has wandered over the years under private property. And conversely, there's people with private property that have wandered their lawns onto the path side of beyond their actual property. So we started to look at that and talked about that. And we came to and Carol, if you have something to want to bring into this, feel free to just raise your hand and I'll reach out to you. And as we walked along, one thing Carol did tell us is she said, the Whitney property, they have surveyed their land and they want to make sure they know where their property line is. They want to work on their garden. The public is meandered onto what they thought was their property, and they have done a survey, and there's some little markers that have been put in the ground that show the property line of several feet in length. So I'm going to stop right there and let Carol or Susan, if you have something you want to say. And just before you do that, Rick has his hand up. Rick?
Yeah, just a quick question. Did you mention 13 Baxter as needing a marker? I wanted to just understand that.
I believe that's the number. It's by the Joan Porter Garage.
Yeah, and is the marker for the extension of Rosalie or what's going on?
Yeah, it's a roads away marker. It's one of the, well, it's one of those that's on our list of places that have been scoped out for several years.
But that makes sense. I just wanted to be clear. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Rick. Carol or Susan, either one of you want to go first? Get them.
Susan, I think you're doing great, Bill.
So first of all, thank you very much for taking the walk. We do appreciate it. It is a beautiful walk. I think you stated accurately the situation. I would just ask the committee at some point to look at Google Earth historical pictures in 2016 and see how it has changed over the years, over 7 years. It really is very, very significant. I guess my other comment would be, I was surprised about your comment about having grass beyond the bluff walk. I thought that was a good thing, making it easier for people to walk and taking care of that grass.
So let me clarify that. So what I meant by that was people have extended their lawn across, and actually it appears, because we don't know for sure until it's studied further. But in some of that pushing the lawn across, they've actually made the water side a private area. There's benches that are put up or whatever. And so it's confusing for the average Joe to walk in there and think, oh, I'm in the middle of somebody's lawn, when in fact they really aren't. And so once, as we've said many times with, both Carol and her predecessor, once the horse is out of the barn to look at something, all the horses get looked at instead of just the one you went to look at. So, by default, there probably will be things that cause consternation for folks, that say, well, I really don't care about that, but once we start the process, that's what's gonna happen. And I actually have, if I share my screen here, just so that the board can see the well-defined items that you put up. So there's no mistaking what that is. So if you just hang on 1 second.
Bill, while you're doing that,
Yeah.
this is Lee. I'll say to Susan that if you go to the town's GIS, there's a listing of aerial photos by the year in which they were taken. And because it's the town's GIS, it will also have property lines on it.
Okay, I happen to know sometimes they're not accurate, but it's a good judge.
We
Oh.
understand, agree.
So before Ed chimes in, these are the feet will not be acknowledged and whose feet they are. But the little like half a tennis ball kind of a thing is what's been put in the ground, the length of the section that they're talking about. So you can see they're not something that's pretty easily picked up and taught someplace. And so I think it's a great start to noticing the difference on where things is. And you can see where the walkway has gone to the west of its intended area. And to correct that, the walk is gonna be get pushed towards the east there. But anyway, that's what, is there anything else you want to add about that? To what you went
No,
to?
no, you have portrayed it accurately, and we're just, like many people, just concerned about personal liability potentially, and so we're just taking a precaution. Thank you.
Ed?
First of all, Susan is indeed correct about the GIS, the inaccuracies that are possible in the GIS. Second of all, I think in a way, a part of the encroachments he's talking about, not the path encroachments, but the private property encroachments on the path have been done in landscaping fashion where landscape ties have actually been pushed out. Now, it's not just lawn, it's actually the landscape ties themselves, sometimes privet hedge on top of those landscape ties have been pushed into the path. And they've made the path so narrow that you couldn't walk side by side holding hands. And there's another case where if there's a particular one, I won't name exactly where it is right now, but where the path actually from going back 10 or 15 years and knowing the people that bought the property and their survey and everything else, the path actually bulged out toward these steps down. So it was a wide point. It wasn't just a 4 or 6 foot path at that point. It was a bulge area. They have actually gone to the other side of the path, put a gate there, created a little small lawn area that precedes the walkway down. So in other words, I think that probably was an area people stopped because it was wider and everything else. But to prevent that, they have had their landscapers on one time come out with landscape ties and privet and other plantings, and then on the other side come in and make the path quite narrow in an area that really was part of the path and never their property anyway. So I mean, there's a couple of egregious encroachments by private property owners. In most cases, they're minor, and the path, back and forth, there's minor stuff, but there are a few that are very intentionally done, you can tell.
The other thing that we'll be going over, I'll catch you guys. The other thing that in reviewing the different documents that are available, we have a report that was done by Natural Resources Jeff Carlson, and he did a report to the town on all of the steps and the access down from the bluff, down below the bank. And it was noted at that time how many are actually permitted. And by permitted, I meant went through the permitting process, and the numbers that haven't been permitted. So at some point, I would think, as we forge ahead here and try to deal with encroachment issues and getting the path point of travel corrected where it is wandered onto people's property. That discussion will probably come up also. And so that's just, it's not meant as a threat or watch out for this. It's just a point of fact that it will be part of the discussion at some point. Carol?
Yes, Bill, I just wanted to say that if we could help in any way, the Civic Association, I've talked to a few people about surveying their land or getting a group of people to survey with the same surveyor, so they had accurate, dimensions of their property. But when I walked with you, you could see clearly where Susan's property is. There's an issue because if you walk a foot or two to the east, you fall down the bank. And I'm concerned about that in some of these areas where the homeowners aren't encroaching on the path. And one of the other things I wanted to say is the path is getting lower and lower as we're walking on it, and people are walking on the top sides of the path, and that's creating another issue. But one other thing I wanted to tell you that I saw for the first time yesterday. So the tall markers that you want to put in, and there's one as you enter the path that I believe says public way. I saw people locking up their bikes, which is kind of ridiculous, around the monument, the tall pillar.
But that happens all the time.
Susan, right in front of your property.
It happens all the time.
I started to laugh, and of course I asked them nicely. I told them there are lots of bike racks by the market, and if they could please move their bikes. But I just didn't want to call that to your attention. It just.
Yeah.
Sometimes I have pictures. One time there were 30 bikes. Sometimes I have pictures of 4 or 5 baby carriages too.
Good.
Part of the issue, as we talked when we were with Carol, is the attitude of the public today is much different than it was when this whole path was created and just in general. And the respect for rules and regulations is not what you would hope that it would be.
May I comment on that?
Absolutely.
There was one incident where people are unusual, and there was 4 people, and the lead person was reading a book out loud. Now, I don't understand personally why you'd walk on the bluff walk and read a book out loud, but they had to project because the others were behind them. And so I heard them, they were heading south. I heard them several homes before they came to our home. And I did ask them politely, could you please lower your voice? And her response was, this is a public sidewalk. I can do whatever I want.
Yeah. Well, that's
Yeah. Well, it's a good thing it's not your neighbor every day that's doing that. So any comments or additions from the board?
Well, when we,
Alan? Oh, and first I just, everybody knows we've been joined by Phil Smith, a member of the committee. So if you see, when you started, you say, how come that person wasn't there? Because Phil is here now, and we want to make sure you understand that he's a board member.
Thank you.
Just as a point of information, and Alan will recall, the Sconset Bluff Subcommittee put together a substantial report, and I believe it's on our webpage. At one of the appendices to that report, lists all of the steps down to the beach. And that can be compared with Jeff Carlson's report, which I think supplied a lot of the basic information, which was then ground truthed by walking the path.
Alan?
Yeah, when we started this project, what, 7, 8 years ago, whenever,
More than that.
more than that, it was.
Yeah, because you were already into it when I came on.
Yeah, right.
It was about 10 or 11 years ago, I believe.
Yeah.
I have, here's a report. I just don't have the date.
When we started it, when we took that project on, it was, well, different times. But the reason is because it was a public way and there had been issues, people using the path and complaining. So that's what led to, we formed a subcommittee. That subcommittee worked for over a year. We met on that subcommittee. We had several members, or several people who actually live on the path, participate. In fact, I believe there were 3 or 4 members that were, engaged with the path. As as Lee said, we did do a final report, and it was a pretty detailed report about the history and all that sort of thing. And but it was never our intent. We never thought that people would be abusing the right of public access. The whole thing, one of the main things that Roads and Right of Way does is public access. We're very involved with public access around the island. And so we had no intention of creating a problem out there. However, people are going to be people. And particularly as we've seen the increase in summer visitors, let's put it that way, more and more of them tend to feel they have a right to, behave however they want, which is unfortunate. How do you, the problem is enforcement. How do you enforce good behavior? I don't think anyone has discovered that, magic potion or whatever it takes yet, other than direct participation.
One thing to you, Chairman, to Alan, Alan being on the land bank as well, I mean, you must face a lot of these same issues with land bank property in general, right, with public. And it does come down to, I think the general public, quite frankly, doesn't know about most of the accesses to the water. Right. So I would leave that aside. It's the path itself, and the the only thing is enforcement. And if enforcement, it's like one-way streets, people biking down one-way streets. Is there a fine attached to it? Is there someone to enforce it? I mean, that might be the ultimate solution to it. I mean, is that we have to figure out to the town, is there an enforcement mechanism? Does it have teeth in terms of financial implications? I mean, something. That's the only way you can train the public, I think. Unfortunately, that's, and we have doubled the number of people coming here, so you're gonna have to double the number of misbehaviors. It's just unfortunate that that's what it is.
Yeah.
I had just heard, and I'm hearing it again here, about looking at the stairs down to the beach, and I'm assuming creating and letting people know, and that will spread like wildfire on Instagram, that they can access the beach down those steps that people have created that don't belong, that aren't private. Can you imagine? We will have people walking with beach chairs and towels and coolers down that path and down. So I beg Jeff Carlson, whoever, that we have to figure out either to close these access points. That I would venture to say the people that have put them in there don't even use them, right? They're just like an ornament. There's never anyone on that part of the beach.
So just from our point of view, we wouldn't be publicizing it, we wouldn't be anything. All we'd be doing is advising, or reiterating what has already been documented. And, quite frankly, it may come that those people will have to either go through the committee process or remove them. And so, you know, I hear what you're saying, but quite frankly, that's out of our wheelhouse. We're supposed to be looking at things, identifying the encroachment. And
Okay,
will we understand why somebody puts rocks on the side of a road? They're liable. So anyhow, we hear what you're saying, and we are not gonna be the ones spreading the word. That's not our job, not our role. Our role is to just try to, bring, into compliance, stuff as we discover it.
okay, thank you,
If I
Bill.
can-
Yeah.
Let me just add to that. When we did the report on the bluff path, we also looked at the stairways going down, and we realized that some of them had, you know, they had granted public access to them. We decided specifically not to mark that or to have that in any of our documents, mainly because we didn't want to invite people to go down to those paths. There is one, just the one in front of, what is it?
White cottages,
Wait,
the land bank one, white cottages. one?
Yeah, the land bank one in front of Moby Dick or.
White
whatever.
cottages. Greens, white cottages.
Yeah, Wade Cottages is the one. That's the only one that is marked as access. And but again, we intentionally did not want to encourage people to go down those stairs. So we just sort of let the ones we found with public access, we just didn't mention them.
Right.
Rick, and then unfortunately, we're gonna have to, wrap up this part of the agenda so that we can get through the rest of it. Rick?
Right, I agree with Alan in terms of, you know, advertising or trying to get more people. That's certainly not our intent. But I think there's a difference between some of the steps which have no sign. Some of the steps, however, have a do not enter sign or whatever. There's a distinction, and a subtle thing might be if those were taken care of, no one's going to be excited about whether they're licensed by the Concom and or the town. You know, it's just the way it is. I don't think you'd ever have any trouble if people wanted to get them taken care of that way, the Concom and the town. It would just be so routine, you'd never know it happened, or that's the way it should be. But I'm not suggesting what to do here, but I do mention that one subtle distinction. Thank you.
So, we're gonna move on, and the next thing you folks are welcome to stay. If your knitting is done and your laundry is done and your cooking is done and you're completely bored and you wanna hang and chat with us, you're welcome to, but otherwise, thank you for joining us.
Bill, can you just tell us, and we'll say goodbye, what is the procedure? What are you going to do now? What is this committee going to do now?
We just made a report to the board now. And
No, I
then
mean, I mean,
What?
on the encroachments, how are you gonna proceed?
I don't know yet. We're gonna actually go out and do another walk specifically to look at encroachments. And identify the street number closest to that. And then the other thing, it's also going to help us, I believe, and we talked about this when we were walking, the areas that may in fact become unsafe, passable because the town property or the homeowner's property extends to a point where it's unsafe for people to continue through that section. And I told you then, and I'll state it for the record, just so that we're consistent. And when you asked, you know, would that be the end of would that be the way that the walk gets shuts down? If, you know, and my belief is that if in fact that occurs, that Bluff Walk will stop where that, impassable section is. And then continue on the other side where it is. So if in fact it comes to a point where it's impassable, then, probably the prudent thing would be at the last exit point on the path, that a sign be put up, from here on, it's a dead end or whatever, so that people exit instead of trying to cut through people's lawns and whatever. So hopefully that's down the road. But our first step is to actually put addresses to where the encroachments are, so that we know what we're talking about as much as possible. And that'd be a fine time for the people when they see us out there and whatever, to chat, and we certainly be reaching out to them. It's not gonna be, Raiders of the Lost Ark swooping in or whatever. It's, we're trying to be very upfront and on board with everything that's going on.
Thank you, everyone. And if you need our help from the Civic Association, you know how to reach me.
All right, thank you
Thank you
again.
for your, thank you for your attention to this. Thank you.
Good
Bye.
night.
Bye.
So
I think it's
moving
the
along
most
here.
egregious ones we're really after, not there's these slight.
So moving along, the next item, resident Michael Angelastro sent us a message, or sent me a message about Cato Lane being a private way, and was wondering why it's not maintained and why it was not cut back to allow traffic. And Alan, being part of the land bank, is certainly familiar with that area. And you want to.
Yeah, we looked at that and we determined that it was in fact not a public way. The town had never taken it, or, so.
This is the entirety of Cato
The
Lane,
entirety from,
like NASA.
yes, right, yeah, I'm just
Bartlett?
trying to, yeah, right, from Bartlett Road over to,
Kind of Nassaquissa
Yeah.
area when they start.
yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Through that farm, the Trippy farm.
Through the, Hound and Hare side.
Bill, here I'm fishing into an uncertain memory, but I think we discussed Cato Lane in terms of a recommendation for a taking, and agreed that there wasn't enough characteristics of a private way that would support a recommendation to take, so it never made the list.
And that middle section during the Hounds and Hare and Trippy, quite frankly, is land bank now owns both sides of that, correct? So it's more the private, so it's more of a meandering path than a
Exactly.
way,
Yeah.
because then people will start thinking they can drive through there or whatever they, yeah.
All right, so I'll get back to Mr. Angelastro and give him that, and he's certainly welcome to check out this.
Was that the part he was talking about, that part?
Yeah,
specifically?
his point was you used to be able to walk all the way through, and now you can't.
Oh, you can't, but you
Well,
can't.
you can
can.
walk through.
You can still walk.
through on Cato Lane.
Yeah.
There was a big puddle, a perennial puddle that seems to be there every time you go through it, but.
And there was some instances where that was kind of, they had to do a little patrolling to check out what was going on in that section
Right,
as
yeah,
well,
right.
because I know at one time there was some things happening down there that were.
And the land bank does have a trail. There's a trail entrance over on the, I forget what it's, as you're coming in, off the pavement where the road kind of hooks there. So anyway, there's a trail that goes both to on the right side and the left-hand side. Loops on either side.
Right.
So.
Rick?
Yeah, just to be clear, and maybe everybody knows this but me, is Cato Public south of that area? From Bartlett up to Bailey and up to the next block? Is that a public road that far? That's my first question. The second question is the same thing up north. So if you go north from this area, what is that, Hiawatha that goes off to the left there? And Cato goes up to Vesper, is that part public?
My understanding is that whatever it is a private way.
But the Cato Lane part he's talking,
The
referring to.
the Cato Lane, once you get to the pavement, that's, I believe that's the public parking. As you come up Neshaquisset and turn right, you go by, I don't know, out to Vesper Lane, I think it is.
Right.
They'll go by Polywalk.
Right, that's, but he's also talking about the other side at Bartlett Road that leads into the land bank section of Trimpe, you know, the part that goes by Bailey Lane, like where is that part also public?
No, I believe that's private.
So it might be private all the way up to the
Up to-
Hiawassee
Right.
kind of
I mean,
section.
That's okay, if it's private, the town probably plows it out, my guess, with all those houses around there, otherwise they'd be in real trouble. Cause I'm not aware of a homeowners association, but maybe there is. When there's a private way and there are public needs on that section to the south. That's why I'm sort of curious.
If I can.
So I was trying to put up, go ahead, Ed. I'm trying to put up the GIS, but.
Rick, the
internet's not
Bailey
really
Road and all that in there had a homeowners association at one time when that subdivision was created. Now, how it treated the Cato Lane little
Right.
sidebar, I don't know. I know within it, and it was a very poorly seeking fund type homeowners association was saying. So I think that it's maybe was if some owners got in there together, they could, and it snowed a lot here, they could enforce snow and plowing and things like that. But otherwise, I don't think anyone does much of anything there.
Yeah.
Right.
Just to follow up, just to be clear, I think the reason sort of asked this is that if someone like Mr. Angelostro wants to follow up and get pretty specific about whatever it is that is tweaking his interest, I think it behooves us, maybe you don't want to do it here, but somebody ought to be clear as to what the reality is. And, people who go to that public roads map on the GIS, that's about the most difficult map to interpret. It's the marks are well beyond the roads layouts and so forth. So I haven't gone there for Cato, but we ought to know what we're talking about before someone else knows more than we do.
It just Cato Lane Vesper.
This one.
Does Cato Lane cross Vesper?
As a walking
So
path.
finally,
It gets
Yes,
up
it
to-
does.
Right.
there is Cato Lane.
Right, I know it does. That's why I'm wondering whether he was referring to that portion.
No, Mike's interested. Mike, I mean, Ed knows Mike. Come on. And
Yeah.
what tweaks his interest here is, whatever.
I know.
I think I can figure it out. If I can, you can.
I know what you're saying. And I was just wondering if he was talking about the entirety of it, the far north part of it.
Mhm.
So anyway, I'll try to get some more information and,
Pull the map down a little bit if you don't mind, if you
Yep.
can. Keep it going. And now you see where it crosses Vesper and becomes Cato Lane across the road. That's why I was wondering if that was part of what is, see how Cato Lane,
up there.
see it continues up there.
Yeah.
And it's my understanding that that part of Cato Lane might be also private,
I believe he was talking about
the Trimpe Farm.
the fact that you
Yeah.
basically can't drive from
Walk.
one end of
To
Cato to the other.
I think he was talking about even if you just build a walk, perhaps, maybe it's grown up a lot, I don't know. Turn the
Yeah.
land over the land bank section.
So,
Yeah.
anyway,
Do you want that image in the minutes?
sure.
Yeah.
And
maybe
I
that's a
will,
land
I will
bank
follow
issue.
up with him to find out the specific area and get back to the.
And it might be a land bank issue too, a little bit.
Yeah.
The section he's talking about.
Okay. DEP chapter 91 hearing. 15 commercial street, Rick attended and I believe Alan did also. Let me take this down. Either one of you have anything you want to pass along? And just for those that don't know what 15 commercial was, it's Mickey Rowland Cottage and it has to do, well, actually it's the NIR piece on the other side of, Petrol Landing. And the move, or attempted move is going to be to put the Mickey Rowland cottage where the NIR cottage is on the other side of the Petrol Landing. NIR wants to take that down and, at this point, I believe the thought was to take the Rowland building and stick there. And we were asked by the town administrator to opine on the, process. Rick?
Yeah, I think I report on this at the last meeting or some meeting, but if not, I attended as a private citizen and I raised my hand to speak. And I said specifically, I'm not representing the roads and right of way. I have no authority or, commission from the committee. But I did say in my own mind that moving the house was probably in the best interest of public access. It makes it easier for people to walk around in front of Mickey's old lot and connect to any other pathways that hopefully will be part of the Harbor Walk. I hope that's the extent of what I said. Maybe Alan remembers differently. and that's my report.
Thank you, Rick.
I can chime in on that. The land bank has been sued ever since we bought the property. I think it was 8-10 years ago, whatever, by the neighbors. We had two neighbors that were suing us. Now we just have one neighbor. And they've gone through the land court. They've gone pretty much as high up as they can go.
Is this for Petrol Landing?
This is for Petrol Landing. Because we had a plan for that. So when we bought Mickey Rowland, this was sometime after we purchased Petrol Landing, we started to think about, well, what can we do with the Rowland house? It's too tall. It won't go under the wires to get out of there. So because originally we thought we could move the house, but because it's too tall, the wires and all that sort of thing, that didn't work. So we were contacted by John Toohey from NIR, who asked if we would be interested in letting them have the building. And they're just moving it from basically one side of Petrol Landing over to the other side. So the initial hearing that I attended got a positive result, whoever spoke to it. Then I understand the planning board, that there was a second hearing afterwards. And on the planning board, they raised some question about the move. I don't know what their complaint was because it doesn't make any sense to me why they would oppose that, but.
So Phil was not going to be able to attend, but and you can follow up on this, Phil. But Jesse from
Jesse
Right.
Hill, Executive Director.
and so we chatted a bit about that, and she was looking to see if we would support it, and I basically relayed what Rick did about the fact that house disappearing does nothing but improve public access in that area. And that the next step that they seem to be faced with is trying to deal with the HDC and height requirements and whatever. So,
The height thing's a big deal.
but
So, Bill, I've got a major point and a minor point.
Yeah.
The major point, Alan, is the land bank wants to open up Petrol's Landing.
Right.
And that move gives you more room to do so.
Yeah.
And the plans are public or not?
Yeah, well. probably not.
At one time, there was a move to put a finger wharf out for shell fishermen to land their catch.
Yeah.
I think that got the people on Swain/Commercial Wharf very upset.
Exactly, yeah. We've gone through, I would say, probably 3 or even 4 different iterations of what we wanted to do. And that was before we bought the Rowland house. So, it's still a work in progress. We can't do anything until we resolve the lawsuit. As I say, that's been ongoing for years.
So we've had two of our members say that they've attended the hearing and, to put it neutrally, see no problem with the move. I think this, committee should, vote on a motion to, let, whoever's in charge, who held the hearing,
The state.
Conservation Commission, that were in favor of the move.
There was a chapter 91 hearing. Was not, because the posting was not done by the Concom, it was done by, do you know who that was? Phil? We'd have to look at the posting. See.
Yeah,
I know Libby reached out to you,
Because
and it was
the
a chapter 91 waterway license. That's what it was.
Then
It was posted, hey, Bill.
Yeah.
Bill, it was posted by the same people who came to our forum and run the chapter 91 program. And I might just say one other thing, I'm not sure where Holly Backus stands now, but she was at some point concerned about the fact of removing the existing house that would be replaced by Mickey's place because it might be historical or contributing or whatever. That may have gone away, but I think that was the issue that has to be resolved through the HDC. I hope I'm right on that.
Rick is right, actually, and it's more the contributing factor thing and the height. But that's an HCC issue, it's not ours. And I think maybe we should go on record as saying we're not not that we agree with the move, but we're not opposed to the move. Maybe that's a better way to put it, because it doesn't
that's
come
his
with
motion,
everything.
I second it.
Yeah. So when Holly comes back here, you're prepared to deal with her point of view. If she wants to be serious, I have no idea.
Well, it's my understanding, especially after talking with Jesse, that she figured that that would be the real hurdle for them to cross, because nobody was objecting to the fact that the removal of the house, not where it was going to end up, but the removal of it, nobody was objecting to that. The objections would be where it was going or not going. If it was going to be demolished, that was one thing. If it was going to go someplace else, that'd be another thing. But as far as removing it, no one has objected to that. That I know of.
And Bill, our purview is right away, and it increases the right away. So that should almost be as far as we go in the discussion of the move. We'll let everybody else, land bank, HDC, fight it out to do, but it does increase right away because now there's not a building in the way.
Exactly.
And before you used to have to walk down, there still was a right of way, but it low tide. But now there'll be.
And because we hadn't met, I said, and we hadn't voted for that, I said, I can't give you an official roads and right of ways endorsement. However, since it would seem that it does just exactly what you said, I said, I'd be extremely surprised if that was not the case. So I think voting that today just will reaffirm that. We can follow it up so that she has it as an official endorsement from the board. So that being said, if there isn't any more discussion, if we want to take a vote on Ed's motion, that if you repeat that so
That we take that we let them know that we're not opposed to the move, as opposed to supporting. It's a language thing.
so that's the motion. We have a second.
Yeah, I did.
Any other discussion? So roll call, Alan Reinhardt,
Aye.
Lee Saperstein,
Aye.
Rick Atherton.
Aye. And I'll be right back.
Okay, Bill Smith,
Aye.
Nelson Eldridge,
Aye.
Ed Gillum,
Aye.
Rob.
Aye. Aye.
And Bill Greeter, aye.
Okay, now I said I had a minor point.
Okay,
I am the pedantic professor. And Petrel was a steam fishing boat that was used frequently as a charter boat to get up to Wowinnet.
Right.
And so the landing was Petrel apostrophe S.
Yes.
It's a petrol's landing.
Right, just like Rosalie's Way as the apostrophe for the
And,
S.
and for full disclosure, one of my relatives owned the petrol. So,
Yes,
This is not gonna go on the minutes.
that doesn't mean hither or not, but,
it wasn't the birds then.
anyway,
Okay, it was a bird originally, but
I know.
the boat.
every time I go down there, I hear it. Okay, thank you
I'll
for
bring
that.
this up later.
Bill,
Bill will get into this.
Bill, anything on
We have time.
the Mattocket, Nantucket Harbor Plan Committee?
We've been meeting, since, the beginning of the year, every 2 weeks, even through the summer. And we met on Monday, and, I don't think it really has much to do with this committee, but just, I think, as information. We had, the committee had approved the boundaries of what we consider the Mattocket Harbor and the Nantucket Harbor. And it was a slight modification to what had been in the 2009 plan, expanding it a little bit. Our friends in Mattocket showed up on Monday, asking us to extend the eastern boundary significantly to include the wetlands. And I mean, essentially, you know, we've asked them to give us a chart showing how that boundary would be pushed out, but it is dramatic. And the feeling of the committee at this point, we will look at the chart and we will vote at our next meeting, but the feeling of the committee is, you know, the entire island is a wetland. And so, okay, the people in Mattocket are quite vocal, but the fact is you could make the same argument for Nantucket Harbor, and you could go to Cliff Road. So I think that I think the several people on the committee made the point that we are dealing with harbors, not with wetlands.
Just for a point of information, there were some residents of Mattocket that attended and made that.
That was, yes.
Right, and that has not been put out to Mattocket in general. It has been since that meeting, and the link to your map and whatever. So, appreciating the enthusiasm that some of those folks have. At this point, it's an individual request or individuals request, not an area request. Yeah.
I have a question to Phil, actually, what was the basis of this, coastal resilience, rising?
Yes, yes,
Is that the anticipation of
yes,
all that?
yes.
Okay,
But I think what we're trying to do is we'd like to, and Rich will vote on it, but I think the sense of the committee is we're focusing on the harbors.
Yeah.
We're not focusing on the long pond.
in 10 years when the water does rise, then you can
Well,
focus
then
back on the
that
harbors.
will be when the committee will be back.
Right,
Updated again,
right,
but
yes.
in the meantime.
Should that happen?
But it was an interesting discussion, and I think that we're gonna look at this chart and we're gonna make a decision. And the folks from Mattocket promised to be at our next meeting also.
So, follow up to the planning committee, that Phil was just talking about. Kristen from the UMass study group, at Rick's suggestion, she reached out to me, and I actually told her about the Mickey Rowland hearing, and she might have attended, because she was interested. She's very interested in Chapter 91 stuff in general. And I believe she's done a lot of work in that area. And so she actually was asking for input from this committee on 91 access. And so her first question was, do you have any thoughts on appropriate signage? for that. And, so I said I'd bring it up and, we'd talk about that and after I did that, I had to go down to the High Line. And I cut back through to North Wharf and, I saw something that, oh, this would seem to be an appropriate type of sign. And this is the little walkway behind Captain Toby's that goes out onto North Wharf. And other than the fact that it says residential parking only, or resident parking only, it very clearly states, that it's a public access under the chapter 91, and it gives a license number. So I'd offer that out as a question or a suggestion. Do you think this is the sort of, I guess she was asking if we had a template of what we thought should be on a sign. Rick first.
Well, I was just gonna ask Phil, is there something that you could share with us why the Mattocket people wanted that extension? Was there a rationale, or they just liked the idea? I mean, I would think they wouldn't show up and just say, oh, expand it 500 acres just cause. They must have something on their minds.
Well, I mean, they feel, and probably rightfully so, that it will affect the harbor. But,
You probably feel somebody will be filling in the wetlands.
yeah, I mean, so Rick, I think the reason for that is because I think that the wetlands are part and parcel of the harbor.
Yeah,
And
okay.
it's to some extent, okay, maybe, but not for perhaps the purposes of what our committee is trying to do.
Harbor nourishment.
And I think the other thing, Rick, is that there are several organizations in the island that have different boundaries here. And they felt that if we moved ours eastward, it would be consistent with all the other boundaries, I think that it would be nice to have consistency, but I think people on the committee were struggling to understand why that should be a priority for all the other stuff we're trying to do. I don't know, does that answer your question, Rick? It's not a very good answer.
Yeah, more or less. Maybe one follow-up that would help. Does your map go to the creeks? I mean, are they part of Mattocket Harbor or not? As it stops at the end of the Great Harbor Yacht Club or something. I should look at a map and not waste our time here. And I'll do that. I'm just curious.
I would just say, Rick, that our friends in Mattocket in this whole process have been much more engaged than the other communities around the island.
Yeah, I got you. Thank you.
Getting back to the signage, did you have, Ed?
I had a question. I mean, there's a number of places around the town, near the Dreamland, near the land bank property, near the as it cuts through the store off of North Water Street, where it just says public, even down at the Great Harbor, where it says public access.
Exactly.
And it's a little marker that's sitting on the ground.
Nantucket Yacht Club.
Exactly.
Right, and the pieces in the ground with the blue arrows, it's a
Right.
public way. Those were all part of this roads and right of way committee that we oversaw.
I mean, that is the ultimate, but again, that's to get all the license numbers and all that. That's
Well,
probably.
I think her question is if they're gonna be drafting up regs or making suggestions for regs, one of those would be going forward.
Well, do we have a sign up this way or a sign on the ground? I guess it comes down to.
Yeah, so I mean, but if it's not a ground
Better if
sign.
It was up that way.
I like that.
It's probably
And-
better if there's something to put it against.
And I think we should recommend some kind of uniform signage that acknowledges chapter 91.
So, yes,
So I mean, if the consensus is,
That would help us a lot in opening things up.
or like we do in Wisconsin Bluff Path, we have upright monuments and we have
Yeah.
ground monuments, so it
so
could be.
I also during the discussion, we talked about let me take this down. We talked about the chapter 91 cache of information that seemingly is in the town's hands. Because I mentioned to the town manager that, we were struggling trying to get information on chapter 91 licenses, and she said, well, it's all town public information, it's on the town website. Which we know, it's on the town website to some degree, but not.
It's
to great.
5 layers down.
And so it's not readily available to the average Joe.
Because there is no table, one has to research the deed of an individual property
Right.
To look and see whether
So-
there's a condition of the chapter.
So when I was talking to Kristen, she asked the same thing, and she said, well, we're trying to get as many of these licenses as we can get a hold of, and so I was telling her about it's our understanding that Natural Resources Director has the big loose leaf book and has all these, and that we were thinking, we haven't done this as a formal vote yet, but we were thinking of taking the ones that we were able to get a hold of, putting them on the Roads and Right of Ways website in the folder of chapter 91 licenses. And it would be a good repository for any that the town got a hold of, as to have them in one place. And once it's on the web, it's on the web, and it's a town website. So both she and I also mentioned to Jesse Bell, that it sounded like it might be a project that an outfit such as UMass Study Group could be tasked with at some point, or WPI or whatever, to scan the stuff, and make it an uploadable file, and to put it in this folder that we have not yet deemed that we should do. And it would be a start to gather this information, and then going forward, when we find out about licenses, we could make sure they got put in there. So anyhow, that was the gist of that conversation, Phil.
Jeff Carlson at our harbor plan meetings has said that he is the one that has all of this.
Right.
And so I think
Keep saying.
the next step
Can you get it though?
is for some people to sit down with Jeff and go through what he has and see what it is. The discussion has ended at, I have all that information.
When he shared with me and Leslie Forbes, there were 2 big loose leaf notebook files with individual printed pages in them. And at that time, which was a number of years ago, yes, he did have the information. It was not accessible unless you wanted to look at the file. Now, things may have changed from then until now, but I would reckon that new chapter 91 applications are going into the file because it's a requirement that a Concom be notified and be staff member for Concom.
Right, so I mean, I think the first step would be that maybe we as our committee ask for a meeting with Jeff to review and look at what it is. Because if it's in a printed document form, it can be scanned and it can be uploaded.
Yeah.
And we can decide whether we want to go back 5 years or 200 years.
A second.
Rick?
Yeah, just, I also have been in Jeff's office, and in fact, I picked up one of his black books and took it home for a week and looked through it. He's very generous, and it's there. But, let's be honest, Lee saw the black books 5 years ago or more, and Jeff doesn't have time to do any of this. So I would applaud if we got a folder, put in what we have. I know between us all, we must have 6 of them, and get started. If you don't get started, everybody ask is gonna say, oh, it's incomplete, what are you doing, blah, 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 and go nowhere. So I think we should get started, put a few in there, and go to Jeff at the same time and say, we'll make the scans ourselves, or let us use your machine in the corner, and we'll put them on a disc and bingo, see what happens. But if you don't get the folder up, people won't believe you're moving ahead, so.
I think that's a great idea, Rick. I would also say, and Ed, you probably know about this, all of the activity on Easton Street, that is probably less than 2 years old. And I think that goes right to the Harbor Walk situation.
Right.
And so that could be very productive for us to understand what's going on there. It will be also helpful for the Harbor Plan Review Committee, because we're trying to figure out, you know, how that all works too.
It would be nice to have someone tasked with the task of doing this, like someone said, maybe a UMass project, maybe, I remember when the Athenaeum, when I was on the board there, digitalized all the I&Ms and things like that. It was a multi-year project, and a lot of volunteers and interns worked on to get it done. So it's not something that we can
The
walk
first
down
step,
and start going at.
the first step, I think, would be for us to
Suggest creation of a
email a request for the establishment of a folder.
folder.
I think, once we get that permission, the next step might very well be to figure out how the ones that we do have in our possession, we need to have a common labeling process as far as address or something on there. So that as this goes forward, it's identified.
The website's easy, just contact Haley Cook and say, this is what we want to go on our page.
Okay.
They pretty much follow the lead of the committee in terms of what goes up on the pages.
So, if you have a 91 in your possession,
I just happen to have one right here.
I don't live on the water. No, 91.
I have one only because I researched it, but other than that.
Now, when the ocean rises, I might be on the water, but
so,
not now.
Yeah, I'll be on the footpath.
so, I guess the first thing would be a multiple process here. Do a motion to make the request, so it's formally from the committee. I would then send her a request for that. Then the next step would be to gather the ones that members have. And I think compare those to see how they're labeled, if you will, and we can check before they're uploaded to make sure that, at least in our mind, the labeling is something that's consistent that people could search and identify without having to open up each one to figure out what the heck it's for.
Yeah.
Then I think once that's, I think actually, if we do that before we meet with Jeff, so we can say, this is what
We've
the
done.
little amount that we have. We've created a home forum on the town website. And then, find out what he has. And then I think, you know, manpower, woman power, person power is gonna be the issue. We'll have to figure out how to get some funding or appropriations for that to be done by somebody. It's certainly not gonna be able to be done by the staff that
Right.
currently.
I move that we just start the file. Is that a start?
I second the motion.
Okay, so we have a
Excellent motion.
We have a motion that's made and seconded to,
So in terms of the file, there are three identifiers that would be applicable to every license. It's license number, the address, which could include map and plan, and property owner.
Exactly. It's something very simple like that. Thank you.
What
all
about
right, so
restrictions?
motion's been made and seconded. Alan Reinhardt,
Aye.
Bruce Epstein,
All right,
Rick Atherton,
Aye.
Bill Smith,
Aye.
Milton /
Aye.
Mickey Eldridge. Ed Gillum,
Aye.
Rob Ranning,
Aye.
Doug Reader. Okay, so I will start that process. In the meantime, you want to beam them over, or if somebody else wants to be
what
the,
you can put into a spreadsheet.
be in charge
You
of
can have a
collecting the stuff,
column
feel free to
with all
let me
kinds
know.
of additional information. I just said for identifiers.
Are we
so
at
that
the,
you're searching.
are we at the other part of the meeting yet?
We're
New
through,
business or whatever you want?
we're through, with that, we're now at crosswalk.
Oh,
On that previous discussion here, the land bank has a number of chapter 91 licenses on properties we own. And I'm sure that, you know, I would think that the land bank would be willing to share them, if you're looking for some starting.
Yeah.
points.
So we'll start out slow with a few that we have before we reach out, so we know what we wanna,
Mhm.
how we wanna label them, and then I'll establish, with Haley how the best way to get those to her. Whether it's one at a time, or we back a truck up and we'll roll them all out
Yeah.
electronically, so.
I would say if this committee is successful in this undertaking, that would be a huge step forward. Because I think it's one of these things that a lot of different committees on the island are aware of. And it's a little bit of, you know,
Yeah.
we don't have the authority, or we don't have the people, or we don't know how to do it.
I'm consuming time.
It's all public information.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think we can figure it out.
Yeah.
you need the will, not the authority.
Right, the will and the time.
So the next item is crosswalks, and I bring this up just as a follow-up with something I stepped in and sort of created an avalanche, unfortunately. So they were doing the sidewalk over in front of the Seven Seas. And I went by and noticed that at the crosswalk, it was raised curbing and wasn't dropped down for the crosswalk. So I sent a message to Mike Burns with some photos. And said, shouldn't this be dropped down?
And that's an ADA thing, isn't it?
Correct. And so Mike replied, actually you replied by forwarding it to the new DPW director and said, this needs to be corrected. And the pad needs to be put in and everything. The DPW director replied back that they had decided to remove that crosswalk, which is why they didn't drop the curb. So I asked Mr. Burns, I said, it seems as though there's a misstep here because this happened without your knowledge. And you're the head of a transportation group. So he said, yeah, it was a misstep, miscue, whatever. But it had then gone through the process of, and I talked with Acasfaro, indeed, right after I raised the point, it was brought in front of traffic safety and it was approved. But at the same time, I had sent a letter to the town manager, an email to the town manager, bringing this up. And also with a request, as Snooki and I have been chatting, it would be helpful from at least our point of view, and not sure what the committee's point of view was, to have a liaison of roads and right of ways for traffic safety, because it's got to go through them anyhow.
Sure.
And so, and I mentioned it to Mike Burns, and he said, you gotta go through the town manager, so that's what I did. The reply back was, that it's out of our purview, and, that things like this, the access part, the handicap committee, should be looking at it, and the various other departments. And interestingly, when I talked with Acasfaro, even after it was brought up to them, the handicap folks were never brought in. Now, the end product probably is okay as far as moving it to where it went to and all that. My point was the process. And it just irked me that it was yet another thing that was happening behind the scenes that the public didn't get a chance to weigh in on. So I wanted to bring it up, especially since this committee did a lot of work on sidewalks in general. So if that's the case, and sidewalks aren't in the purview, then what the heck? So I'm looking for comments, and That's it. Bill?
Ed was first.
Well, I'll be very brief. Are you suggesting that we have a listing post on the committee of no input, but just a listening?
A liaison.
A liaison, is that what you want to?
So that.
Yeah. And
And
I,
by liaison, be just that, attend the meetings,
and report back to
agree.
us,
pardon?
and report back to us.
And also report to them if we saw something going on, so when they have a hearing, whatever. So not a voting member, nothing, just a liaison.
Right, okay.
Bill?
I think this raises an even bigger issue. What does the town manager think our purview is? I'm sure we probably have a mission statement somewhere.
We do.
We do, it's on the web.
On our
But-
website. Does that line up with what the town manager thinks is our purview?
If I can
Yeah,
interject
Al.
here, this committee spent a year and a half taking the measure, or not taking it, measuring the condition of the sidewalks in the downtown historic district, plus some of the links going out to, the Newtown area. And we summarized those results. We did what kind of chart was it?
Oh, it's a big spreadsheet.
Here's a spreadsheet, a big one.
Yeah, it was an Excel spreadsheet.
Yeah.
And we went down each street, number by number, and identified the condition of the sidewalk, what it was made of, and et cetera. As a result of that, we went to this committee again, went to the finance committee, capital programs committee. And we advocated for putting money aside for sidewalks. As a result of that, the the capital program committee set aside $5 million, $1 million a year for 5 years
We vote on it, tell me.
for sidewalks, and that was a result of this committee. We did take grief from the town manager, saying that we should not have, it's not our
Not have all been at
role
the
to
meeting
be
without
at,
hosting our meeting.
yeah, right. So we were a little fuzzy on the regulations here, but anyway, we made our point, and they did put that money aside for the sidewalks, but that was one of,
Essentially, Alan, we made such a good point that they stepped over our survey, which was door by door, to take it street by street and say, if this street needs to be rebuilt, we're gonna do the whole thing.
Right, well, that's what's happening now. Yeah,
Exactly.
exactly. Right.
exactly.
Well, that just underscores the fact, because I think that what she said in this most recent instance would say that that's really not what you guys should be doing, that you guys, we have a committee that does, sidewalks and stuff like that. And it's part of transportation, so,
So are we.
yeah, so I mean, now, I don't know, maybe this is.
What
a
about the
select-
ADA
I
portion?
mean, we have a
That's
couple of members
surprising
of this
me.
committee that were select board members. I mean, maybe this is a select board thing. What do you guys look to roads and right of way when, for our comments and input?
That's our mission statement up there now.
Yeah. The argument we used for the sidewalks was that it's public access, and that's what,
Yeah.
that's what we deal with. And the condition of the sidewalk. This was also during the time when they were introducing the walkable downtown, I forget what that program was called, but
Agricultural district.
cultural district. And I wrote a memo to Libby saying, well, wait, if you're doing a cultural district, you're designating this, and you want people to walk from here to the Basket Museum to this and that and the other thing, that you got to pay attention to the sidewalks.
Right,
And
or side pass.
So anyhow, I mean, we described the issue very well, and the question is, do we try to clear the air with what Libby thinks our purview, what role we should be playing? And if there is a what she thinks disagrees. Is that variance with what we think? That's something.
We don't have to go
address.
head to head with Libby, though. We could just propose, maybe to the select board or whomever, that we're allowed a seat at the table, so to speak. I mean, you know, a liaison or whatever you want to call it, on boards, just like traffic safety, just like ADA, on board, on issues that would affect the purview that we're operating under.
So just for bad metaphors, we're gonna bell the cat and put the camel's nose under the tent. These are public meetings.
Yeah.
Who's gonna go? Or do we take turns attending their meetings?
There are public meetings, you're right.
And once they get used to seeing us, then the idea of a more formal liaison may not be as upsetting to them.
Well, I think, you know, I will
You don't know
let
what they are.
Snooki speak for himself, but, you know, Snooki, you had the trust desire that you'd be willing to do.
Well, when I was full-time with the fire department, I used to work with them a lot. Because of where the yellow lines had to go, so that we had room to make the turns to get the fire trucks in. And it was Wally Nutt and Sam McCrona that I dealt with most of the time. It's one of the big stinks was when we put the yellow line in front of the funeral home down on Union Street.
Really?
Because with that telephone pole on the corner of Flora Street, you have to get over as far as you can to the right to make that turn. To get in there.
Well, what we've done in the past, this committee has always worked with the traffic safety committee, whatever, you know, if an issue came out that, you know, we discovered that was really traffic safety or whatever, we would contact whoever, it was usually Art Sparrow, and then, or also if it was Erica, she's on the traffic safety. Yeah.
He's traffic safety.
And so, you know, we would just send an email to Erica because, you know, her membership on the traffic safety committee and say, here's an issue that has come before us. You know, we think this is something your committee should take up.
I mean, I think, to Lee's point, I think the difference between just going to the meeting as a citizen, because it's open to the public, or going as an appointed liaison, is the difference between if you raise your hand and you speak, one you're speaking as a private citizen, the other you're speaking as the liaison from Rose and Roywood. Anyway, so I don't know what your thoughts are. I'll just bring it out there.
Well, until we clarify with this with Libby, we're gonna be doing what we think we wanna do and what we can do, and she has a different opinion. So I think there needs to be a conversation.
Well, we do have a pretty detailed mission statement on our website, you know, that
Well,
deals.
that's a basis for
Yeah.
a discussion with it.
So Alan, you and I wanna go.
Another committee.
No, see if
Too
we
many
can appoint-
committees are.
I'm not saying to be, I'm talking about to talk with Libby, because I don't think it would be fair to just submit a request to the select board. I think, you know, we do it formally. So far, I've only done it as, you know, the chair, and made the thing, we want to make a formal request, to set up a meeting, and get that.
I'd start with a meeting with her and just say, hey,
Yeah.
we're a little confused. We thought this was in our purview, and you're saying it's not. Look,
Yeah,
what,
right.
Rick has got his hand up. I don't know whether this is.
Greg,
Yeah, just to suggest, I think the first thing you ought to do is read the mission statement and closely and see if it encompasses everything you're talking about. You know, from a select board point of view or Libby's point of view, it's not easy just to say, oh, you know, anybody who shows up and says, hey, I'm really interested in this hot committee, I want an official liaison post. And I would simply say that's not so easy, because it, you know, pretty soon you get 20 guys saying, I'm really hot for roads or something. Anyway, so I would be cautious before you get to that level and show your interest in the ways Alan said. We always send an email to Erica. They took up our issues and they were very helpful. Thank you very much. That may be all we really need. So anyway, you go from there.
Well, I mean, it comes under footpaths, basically, right? I mean, the sidewalk is, because it says nothing about sidewalk, it's under footpaths, public footpaths, really. I mean, that's really our
Okay,
mission,
well, maybe,
part of the mission statement.
maybe Libby will say that she was wrong.
Right. Well, or she'll say that next time I'll include you. I don't think you'll
I don't
say,
know.
I don't think Libby will say I'm wrong too.
No.
Let's clear the air.
I don't think that's the way it'll go.
Well, as I said, usually whenever an issue would come up, and if it was clearly a traffic safety issue, that moors to the traffic safety committee, and we would simply refer whoever was contacted us or, said, hey, this.
Remind me, Alan, what was the last time we worked very closely with Art? Was it sidewalks or was there something more recent?
I think it was something more recent because sidewalks was a while ago.
I did ask, what would you, as chair of that committee, what are your thoughts if a liaison was appointed? He said, come on down.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So he said he would welcome the input, so.
Yeah.
Well,
But
this
if
I'm
the
still
board
very
agrees, with consensus, Alan and I will, get an appointment with Libby and just try to get a clarification on that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And as a follow-up to that, if in fact one is able to be appointed, are you still of the mindset
Yeah.
you would like to? Okay.
One of the things that we always did was work with other people, particularly Mike Burns. When Mike was here, he would often attend our meetings. If we had an issue or something, we would go right to Mike Burns and he could usually give us guidance if that's what we needed or facilitate whatever it was we were looking to do.
I'm very surprised though that ADA didn't come into this because it's all about ADA lowering the sidewalk,
They
period.
weren't notified, I'm sure.
I know, you said they weren't. I'm very surprised about that.
So, okay, so.
Hey, that could be the one to
Anything
spark
else
it.
on that subject? We're at other business and, member comments.
It's not really other business, but I thought I'd pass something around, just, and if you wanted to, I'm not sure you want to include this in the pictures and the minutes, but this will fall under something that you mentioned. This is, a couple of properties have come for sale. And on the website with their sale, they posted pictures of what the town proposes for a particular area, and I just thought you would have a look, because this is a very interesting area of pictures of what apparently the town, some committee, the coastal resiliency is envisioning for an area that you brought up about the boats down at Francis Street. And
Oh, I think Alan will recognize that.
Yeah.
but I thought that this is I thought a very interesting kind of boardwalk. There's a lot, that I'm bringing it just forward as informational, not really for any comment, I just thought it was very interesting that it's out there, and as someone's trying to sell a property not too far away from it, as what the future of the area might look like, I guess you could say.
Yeah. Well, the land bank is very much
Well, I
involved,
know
particularly with Washington Street.
Right.
We've spent pretty significant funds so far just on design work. And we are working with the Board of Selectmen. I'm a land bank representative to we have a joint meeting with the select board or certain members of the select board and from the land bank. And we're working together on that whole project. There's
Including the wetland replications, the coastal, it's quite an interesting little map
yeah,
of the Salt Marsh Center and what's gonna happen with that.
it's all a work in progress. I mean, there's nothing cast in stone here, but
Well, I just thought I might bring it to your attention that this is the work in progress, basically, because it's kind of interesting. I mean, especially as it fits into the harbor walk, as it fits into Bill's, the boats being in the wrong place, and
the Harbor Walk is another project that the land bank.
I just thought it was interesting it was out there. It's kind of like a selling point.
Hey, Bill, I'm gonna have to jump. I'm
Yeah.
sorry, but I got something I gotta do, so I'm gonna leave. Bye-bye.
So, one last thing, before we adjourn, this meeting is a little early. Actually, it's a makeup of last month. Do you still want to have the regular October 17th meeting or not? Or do you want to go right to November? Who wishes?
Yeah, it depends on whether you feel we have anything to really discuss.
Yeah, exactly. Is there enough meat to make a meeting?
I mean, the only thing I see coming up right now is, I don't think between now and then, we're gonna be able to get a walkout to try to identify the encroachments on the bluff walk.
We might have.
Well, maybe, but I mean, as far as, I think I'd rather
Mike
have
Burns
us,
be in attendance.
I'd rather have us get that done first, so we know.
We've got a few things we'd like to have done.
And,
So why don't we just
Yeah.
make sure those are done,
right,
Right,
and so that in November,
right,
and is Mike,
Yeah.
and Mike is kind of integral to this, is Mike's participation is October.
I mean,
If
I
he's
think
not
it'd be
available
nice-
in November, it'd be nice to have him here in October.
I think it'd be nice, for the November meeting to be able to come in and say, the folder, the chapter 91 folder's up. We've started looking at, licenses, we've met with Libby. And we may have some more follow-up from, Mike Angelastro about Cato Lane. So I think there's several things we could have on the November.
What is the date of the November meeting? Is it right before Tuesday, before Thanksgiving? Or where are we?
Thanksgiving is always the fourth Thursday, but because of the lie of the calendar, it's like November 23rd.
So I'm wondering just where we are, because a lot of people, you might find Mike says, I'm not available.
Yeah, the third one, right? The third
Yeah,
one. So
21st.
it's the 21st.
21st.
So it's the Tuesday before Thanksgiving, correct?
Yes,
Yeah,
So would, I guess in a general, just
I
short,
won't be here.
that's what I'm saying, who
Actually, you know
might
what?
even be here?
I'll be in California.
So with that in mind, is it better to have an October meeting where more people are here and Mike Burns is here, or to have a November people where we are struggling to get a
Or
quorum?
go off schedule
Right.
for whatever it is,
make it a week earlier.
the 14th, November 14th.
Well, that's true. If we could do off schedule, that would be fine.
So the 14th,
Oh, I have a land bank meeting on the 14th.
I'm out of town, also I'm gone for 2 weeks. But that doesn't mean you can't have a meeting. If you have a hybrid,
No.
somebody's gotta do it. Otherwise you just.
Will you be accessible on Zoom from where you are?
Yeah, but I can't share,
Of course you can.
I can't share remotely if it's a hybrid.
Yeah,
That's
sure.
that's the edict.
I thought they changed that rule.
No, that's the edict, which is why
It's kind of weird.
the last select board meeting, vice chair had to chair it and Don Holgate was attending via Zoom.
I think we need a meeting in October, November that is well attended, and if we can have like Mike Burns at it as well, so whatever happens, don't you think? We don't need 2 meetings necessarily, do we? But one
So-
meeting anyway, right?
If we pushed it out to the 31st of October,
Well, now you get into Halloween and all that, and a lot of people are not gonna be
so
here.
what was that, Halloween?
yeah.
Yeah, every year.
We can all come in costume.
Right,
Um,
big time downtown.
but I mean,
and
that's
all that kind of
that's
stuff.
the furthest we could push it out in October, which would give us more than, they give us 1, 2, 3, I give us 3.5 weeks.
When is when is the week before that?
The week before that.
Is that our scheduled meeting?
24.
24.
Was that our scheduled meeting anyway? I can't remember.
No,
That's a week later, right?
Yeah.
What about pushing out to October 24th?
You have something to do on Halloween?
Well, I actually do.
Is there children?
Well, no, I have people that, I entertain people.
That's why he's already got his costume on.
Yeah. And actually, Bill might, there's some suggestions that some people here might, don't know about yet, that they might have things to do on Halloween as well. That are
What
in
do
the
you think?
works.
October
24th.
That works. for you.
Oh, no, I can't. I have a land bank meeting on the 24th.
Oh, yeah. Oh, okay, on the 24th too.
I mean, it's just me, so yeah, you guys can read if you want, but
Well, I mean, we're coming down to it's either
What time is your land bank meeting?
the 24th or the 31st.
What time is your land bank meeting? No,
4.
4. And so we can only have this room at 4 o'clock.
The 20,
No, 31st.
We
Oh,
can't-
31st is
we couldn't have this
Friday.
meeting at,
31st will work for Alan, but it won't work for Ed.
So,
Anybody's got grandkids or anything to deal with.
yeah, it's not gonna work for some people, I suspect. But besides me, but
so what's the
maybe.
pleasure?
We used to buy a bag of candy. And then we'd eat it all because
You
the
didn't get enough
kids don't
people.
go down New Street, they're
Right.
all on Main Street.
Right,
I would vote for the 31st.
go for the 31st.
so we're not gonna meet on the 17th, is that?
I think we're going for Halloween.
Okay, I can cross that out of my book.
I borrow your pen.
You certainly can.
So Ed, I'll have to check with you to see if we.
You might
can
wanna
get-
check with Mike Burns and people like that to see if they can go on Halloween too, you know,
Yeah.
that's what I mean.
Right,
There's
right.
just, you'll find that a lot of people, it's a big deal downtown. So a lot of people that, even if they don't have children, but you know what I mean?
All right, so we'll, but in the interim, I'll hook up with you to see if they're available,
For a walk,
to do the easement one.
yeah, I'd like to do the walk at some stage, give me a week or two. though.
Then we can figure
Get
out,
back to-
the main thing would be, I think, if we take pictures and identify the address for that report.
If,
All right,
if this is within the purview of the meeting, I don't wanna hold up anymore, or if there's something is better taken up afterwards, this is a particular property. That, and this is the survey. And I won't give I see this bulge in this right
Mhm.
here, that is all part of the bluff path on the deed. And this is a particular property where there's now a fence
Yeah,
with a gate.
And
right
that's
here.
13
Thir-
Baxter Road.
30, no, there's 30.
Joan Porter's.
No, that's 31. It's the one that used to be Jeffrey
No,
Moore's.
God, just as bad as Jones.
Right,
Hers is the same thing.
She's the
She
same
put that hedge and stuff across.
right. But the person has put a hedge here with a gate.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it says private on the gate entrance, but it says private on the way down. But it gives the illusion that they own basically a little, and they're using it. They sometimes have a chair set up there and things like
Yeah.
that. And they pushed out with landscape ties this way to make that's the really narrow part that we saw that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that is a particular egregious, in other words, that's what I'd call an egregious thing, because a path doesn't go necessarily 4 feet, 6 feet. On the deed, it actually has this large bulge in,
Yeah.
when they bought that property, they know very well that was what they were buying. And this person here just bought a property 2 years ago, so they see their neighbor go, monkey
Oh,
see,
yeah.
monkey do, they're gonna do the same thing eventually,
Yeah.
right? But that's what I mean by egregious.
Well, it's
Not,
just like
not just a little bit of this and that or hedge, because the public is pretty invasive. in a lot of
where
ways.
where Ann's Lane comes out
Yes,
on the back. They said, oh, that's not all the way through. That ends at Baxter Road. That doesn't go through to the footpath. That isn't what Roy Sanguinetti told my father when he was town council. Because he looked up Ann's Lane before we ran the water main through there. He says that is a town road.
so
I know every stinking inch of that water main. I put it in.
there you go. So yes, right.
So, okay, at this point, until we decide differently, October 31st. I will do my assigned tasks. We'll hook up on the walk.
And it'd be nice to have, if you're available,
Yeah.
or if Nat's available too, it'd be nice. 'Cause-
Okay, we have a motion to adjourn.
And Alan.
No, Bill.
Or Alan, if he's available.
I just thought the committee would be interested, with the Harbor, Update Committee. We've had several public meetings. And the last one was on Zoom and only Zoom, thinking we might be able to pick up some more people, which we did. We picked up about 60.
Really?
And so total people that have attended, I think we've received a total of something like, not the attendees, but the total responses to the questionnaire is like 550, 560. But I was not on the Zoom call, this last outreach, solicitation of people's comments, where there were 60 attendees. But apparently at the meeting, they said on Monday that, Harbor Walk was a big deal on that, Zoom call. So I just thought I'd mention that that was something that, was a very strong feeling.
It's great, but the issue,
Presuming constantly in favor of the law.
Yeah.
I think-
Positive, yeah.
I think
The-
the harbor walk would be great. There is
The
a
land-
problem with it is the coastal resiliency gets figured in.
Right,
It's where is
exactly.
the walk? It might be on the other side of Washington Street.
Yeah. The land bank has been looking at a harbor walk for a number of years. And now that we are involved with the coastal resilience plan, we're definitely looking at connecting at least down to Otiston, the Otiston property.
Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Seconded,
Second, okay, well,
roll
Phil,
call. Ellen Reinhardt,
Aye.
Lee Saperstein,
Aye.
Phil Smith,
Aye.
Elton Eldridge,
Aye.
Ed Gillum,
aye.
Bob Ranny,
Aye.
Bill Greeter, aye. Thank you all so very much. And let me pull the recording here. I can find it.
All right.
We're still recording.
I gotta stop taking notes. It was town area plan work group yesterday. I didn't quite get the minutes from yesterday finished before I started.
I don't know how you do it. Secretary to me is,
We're still recording, folks.
That's okay.
to being able to participate in the meeting and take the notes. That's the challenge.
Especially, you did such a good job on minutes. I mean,
Now you know what your students faced.